On today's episode, we're defining what I mean by human-centered leadership, and we're naming 4 ways in which leaders can show up for their people and culture with this kind of human-centered leadership spirit. Welcome back to The Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced the best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back, breathe in good oxygen, and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world. Hey everyone, it's Jason, and welcome back to the Thermostat Podcast. So glad you are here. Welcome in. Those of you that are new to the podcast, so glad that you are choosing to be a part of this, jumping into the pod. And for those of you that have been a part of this from the beginning, welcome back. So glad you are here as well. It's been awesome to watch the way that this continues to grow and spread. We're in season 8, so we're at well over 220 episodes now. So thanks to everybody that's been a part of this journey and continues to jump in. And so glad that this is contributing to your life and your work. My commitment to you, as always, is that this will be a place for you to step back, hopefully to breathe in some good oxygen and think about the temperature that you're trying to set in your life, in your work. And I'm so glad you're here, and I hope it is beneficial to you. So thank you for being here. If you'll do me a quick favor before we dive into today's topic, if you'll stop and rate the podcast 5 stars, of course, on whatever platform you're listening to. If you'll leave a nice, authentic review and whatever in your words about the pod, why it's, these messages are relevant or important in the world today, that is super helpful. And obviously, every time you share it with your team, with people, say, hey, let's listen to this pod and talk about it, whatever that is, or share it on social media, whatever authentic for you. Those are ways in which that these messages continue to be amplified and spread around the world. So thanks to everybody that takes the time to do that. So we are on the heels of a 4-part series that I did on trust. And if you didn't see that series, check it out. Great series, great response that we've gotten about it recently. And that there was a statistic that, again, I've been talking about on this podcast because a number of episodes now, I've been mentioning it because it jumped out to me when I heard it. The new stat from Gallup that you'll recognize that just came out in the last month, where it said that 23% of employees, only 23% of employees in the world, strongly agree that they trust their leadership of their team organization and the direction that it's headed. Only 23% say they trust their leadership and the direction of what their team or organization is heading. So it's obvious that through these statistics and my own, personal observations and personal experiences of watching organizations studying this as well, the world needs more human-centered leadership. And what has been so great is I know with the teams and organizations that I support over a longer period of time around leadership development and culture shaping and clarity around mission, vision, and values, we're seeing that the trust levels raise. We're seeing that this human-centered leadership really being compelling to people, and we're the intentional, purposeful culture shaping initiatives that I'm involved in. We are seeing the needle moved and cultures changing and being shaped in such positive ways, which also is impacting performance and return on investment, economic impact that's having on organizations. So all of this stuff is so critical. And that, today, we're talking about this kind of human-centered leadership, and the older models that you've heard me of leadership that you've heard me reference on this podcast, the kind of top of the pyramid hierarchical leadership, barking out orders and telling people what to do is just, it's never been compelling, but it certainly isn't effective in today's day and age. And people are screaming for more human-centered leadership. So on today's podcast, we're defining what I mean by human-centered leadership, and we're naming 4 ways in which leaders can show up for their people and culture with this kind of human-centered leadership spirit. But before we dive into today's topic, let's pause, take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Many teams and organizations right now are realizing that they need to do both. They need to engage the minds and hearts of their people in person, where everyone in the room can experience the energy of congregating together and find clarity for the road ahead. And they also need to continue to find ways to engage the minds and hearts of their people virtually, with those who are working remotely or at a distance. So, if you are in the process of planning your next team meeting, company all-hands event, conference, or culture summit, and are looking for support with a powerful keynote speech, facilitated team conversations that are the currency for change, or deeper development on leadership mindset and an intentional strategy for the culture you're trying to create, I hope you'll contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. It is my privilege and our honor to partner with great people to provide support in these areas. We want to breathe oxygen into your leaders and throughout your organization so you can set the temperature you want for your culture. We look forward to connecting with you soon. I hope you'll contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. It is my privilege and our honor to partner with great people to provide support in these areas. We want to breathe oxygen into your leaders and throughout your organization so you can set the temperature you want for your culture. We look forward to connecting with you soon. All right, on the last podcast, we talked about the fact that your team will be countercultural if the people on your team trust the leadership. Again, I won't go into the whole thing, but go back. This was just a massive, just hit me in the face when I saw those statistics about trust and about organizational culture and the unfortunate statistics that have just come out is that your team will be countercultural. You'll be different than those statistics if the people on your team trust the leadership. Your team will be countercultural if your people trust in the direction that your team is heading. And your team will be countercultural if people want to be a part of your mission, if they feel cared for, if they feel like their contributions are appreciated, and if their organization wants to support their development. So I talked about a number of ways in the last episode of if we can show up as leaders that are counter to what people are experiencing in their organizations in the world, that we will be massive differentiators in the market. Because at a time when only 23% of employees trust in the leaders and trust in the leadership of their team or the direction that they're heading, and also only 20% of employees say they feel connected to their organization's culture, that if you can do the opposite, you'll be a massive differentiator and you will be countercultural. And connected to that is this idea of how we can show up as leaders as what we'd call human-centered leadership. And so let's define human-centered leadership. Human-centered leadership and human-centered leaders are authentic and genuine. They aren't afraid to admit that they don't have all the answers. So they aren't people that are just claiming that as if they do, but they show up authentically, genuinely to people. They admit that they don't have all the answers, but are committed to being in relationship with others who bring other gifts to the table. They go out of their way to find people that can make the whole better, and they view their people as all who are contributors and ambassadors for the culture of the team. It's not just about the leader. It certainly isn't just about the high performers. They see their role of leadership is connecting with the human beings that they lead, finding people with new gifts and skills that make their team stronger. They see their role as not just coercing and barking out orders to people, but developing the relationship with people and helping to support growth and empower people to use their gifts to serve. They listen to people. They show empathy and care, and they connect people to the vision for the future for where they're heading as a team and organization. They show that the human beings are in the team and the organization are the first priority, even before the outcome or the metrics of our efforts. And what's so interesting is if any of you are like, well, hold on, no, it's about our business, it's about our mission, it's about our metrics. Of course, it's about the mission of the organization, but the metrics can't drive the people. The people drive the metrics. And when we show up as human-centered leaders, the metrics tend to follow every single time. The metrics actually go up. And as we've talked about all along from culture shaping perspective, retaining the best people, attracting people to be a part of what you're doing as an organization or a company, and helping people develop all of those things, there is a massive economic impact on that kind of leadership in the positive direction. And organizations that aren't doing that are really struggling navigating the challenges that we've been facing the last few years. So human-centered leaders do these 4 things really well. These aren't the only 4 things they do, but for today's podcast, I'll name 4 things that human-centered leaders do well. First thing is they are storytellers. Human-centered leaders are storytellers. They share the compelling story and vision for where the team is trying to head and the future they are trying to create together. Stories have always been compelling to people. From the beginning of time, people connect to stories. They don't just connect to a number. They don't just connect to a job, to tasks. Human-centered leaders understand the stories of what they're trying to build together and where they're trying to go and the people that they're trying to connect with, that the stories are compelling to people and help them connect to the future that they desire together. So human-centered leaders are realizing that in today's day and age, and this has always been the case, by the way, but in today's day and age especially, people want to understand and get behind the story of who we are and where we're trying to go and why it's compelling and why each individual is important to that future. So human-centered leaders are storytellers. Human-centered leaders, they are emotionally intelligent, which means, and again, I've done a whole series on emotional intelligence on this podcast, so go back and check out those to dive into the different layers and specifics around emotional intelligence. But right now in the world, and again, it's always been the case, but right now in particularly, human-centered leaders, they are emotionally intelligent. They understand their own emotions, and they also understand their own gifts and strengths and the places where they struggle. And they also are able to recognize the emotions and the gifts and where people struggle with the people around them, the social relationships that they have with the people around them. And then they use that awareness to regulate their behavior, regulate their thermostat, to set the temperature for the team. And so human-centered leaders are showing and modeling and practicing this emotional intelligence for everybody around them. Human-centered leaders, they build trust. So again, I've just finished a 4-part series on trust and the different elements of trust. But human-centered leaders, they recognize trust is something that we barter back and forth with one another, and that it's a two-way street. And human-centered leaders have an authentic desire to raise the level of trust with their relationships and throughout their entire team. And so they recognize that part of their role as the leader is to be building that level of trust and relationship and connection with everyone on their team and throughout the organization, and help be developing and creating other thermostats, other leaders to help spread the temperature and that kind of trust and development throughout the organization in alignment with them. And the 4th thing that I'll point out today is that human-centered leaders, they don't shy away from courageous conversations. So if there's any part of you that as I'm talking this through, you're thinking and you're hearing these words about empathy and care and listening to people and connecting with people and emotional intelligence and building trust and all of these things, and you're thinking that somehow that this means that all we are as human-centered leaders is just nice and kind people that don't ruffle any feathers, that's not the message whatsoever. Hopefully we are nice and kind. And as you've heard me talk about servant leadership in the past, you know that as I define that yeah, hopefully we are nice and kind, but that's not what servant leadership's about. That's not what human-centered leadership is about. It's not just about being nice and kind. It's about the ability to model for people that how we enter into courageous conversations and identify the things we need to be talking about, the important things, ways in which we're going to nudge things forward and identify the obstacles or challenges we're facing. And so human-centered leaders, they don't shy away from courageous conversations. They model for people that they will not hide from conflict or tough situations in an effort to hide. In fact, they're not going to pretend as if the obstacles don't exist or make decisions in isolation. Human-centered leaders approach courageous conversations head on and believe in the future that the people that they are in relationship with and connected to believe in the future that we can create together, but we're better know that we're going to talk about it. And we're going to have courageous conversations where we identify ways in which we can do things better and where is which that we aren't setting the temperature that we have said we want to set. So human-centered leaders are storytellers. They are emotionally intelligent. They build trust, and they also don't shy away from those courageous conversations. And if we can do those four things, there's way more than just those four things, but if we could just do those four things as a leader and a team, we will be different than what most people are experiencing in the world today with their leaders and with the cultures that they are creating in the good way. So, some quick questions to ponder for today. What story or stories do your people need to connect with for your future on your team and your organization? In what ways can you show emotional intelligence with your people? Who on your team needs trust to be built or strengthened? And what courageous conversations are needed on your team? I hope today's episode got you thinking in many ways. If a deeper dive into any of these topics is interesting to you or support for your team and organization is helpful, please reach out to us at info@jasonvbarger.com, info@jasonvbarger.com, and let us know. We'll continue to design content and help meet you where you are and help be a positive presence in your journey. Lastly, I'll encourage you to go back and listen to a number of the past episodes. So many episodes, and I know there's topics out there that will be of value to you. Cheers to you on the path ahead. Cheers to you. Cheers to us. And remember that the future of leadership is you. It's me. It's us. And we have the opportunity to get clear on the temperature we hope to set and then be courageous and committed to breathing oxygen into the mindsets and actions that will sustain our path forward. Step back. Remember, be a thermostat and breathe good oxygen. Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using, and share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to you and your organization, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we are all ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.